The next installment of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, The Eternals, is upon us here in just a few days. And the Rotten Tomatoes score, though I'm not a big fan of Rotten Tomatoes, has been interesting to watch the last couple of days, has it not? As I'm sure you've seen in a few other places, or maybe not. Maybe you're seeing it here for the first time. It has been teetering between Rotten and Fresh, currently sitting right now at Rotten with 139 professional critic reviews in. We're going to talk about some of those reviews because some of them are a little eyebrow-raising, to be sure. But also, what is Eternals going to do this weekend, or what do we think it's going to do this weekend? What are the experts projecting at this point it's going to do this weekend? Well, maybe some of those experts might be a little surprised because I've uncovered an organization that I really didn't hear about until today. Did a little bit more digging, and I found it interesting. And they might be the one to shake up the boat, as they have before with two other movies. Let's talk about something. Renegade Online. Well, welcome back, folks. Good to see you all again, and we've got a big one coming out this week from Marvel, or at least for them, a big one. A $200 million production budget monster, easily another $100 million in global print and advertising or marketing. This movie has a tall ladder to climb, probably somewhere in the vicinity of $550 million or so, at least, I would say, global box office for this movie to get over the hump. I mean, these things coming out from Marvel consistently have some enormous budgets, and as I've mentioned in videos before, it's interesting to watch these movies come out from Marvel, be it this or Black Widow or Shang-Chi, with these $150 to $200 million production budgets, and then we get action movies, superhero movies with tons of CGI from Sony Studios, like Venom, Let There Be Carnage, with Tom Hardy and Woody Harrelson, and they make those movies for $110 million. So always a head-scratcher there. I don't know every aspect of what goes into these in terms of cost, but certainly somebody like Chapek, who's a penny pincher, is probably looking at this and asking Feige, dude, what the hell? So, if all these movies were performing right now up to par to where they were getting into profit territory comfortably, that'd probably be a different story. But right now, be it a pandemic issue or not, really doesn't make a difference, whether or not a profit is going to happen. You still want to try to make a profit with a movie at the box office. That's been a struggle for some of these films, particularly from Marvel this year. So let's talk about this for a minute. The Eternals, this is not doing well. And I am not a particular fan of Rotten Tomatoes by any stretch of the imagination, but I have found this very fascinating in the last few days, watching this movie drop precipitously and then now magically start teetering right on the brink of the Rotten versus Fresh. Last night it went Rotten, then a few hours later it went back Fresh. It went Rotten again this morning, and then went back to Fresh, and now it's Rotten again. As I record this, it is about 6:30 p.m., Monday evening, November the 1st. So, you probably might not be seeing this tonight. You might be seeing it tomorrow. I'll probably put it out in the morning. And stay tuned. I am going to have a follow-up discussion on some of these topics later tonight with Cameron Pasha that will be out later this week. So, let's talk about this because some of these reviews in here are curious. And I want to kind of go back to a video that I made some months ago called The Marvel Cinematic Universe is Dead and Kevin Fiege has killed it. It was a bit of a prediction, but it seems more and more to this point as I'm watching this, it continues to come true, and it was mostly due to the marketing side of things. And, having movies coming out that were never properly set up, characters that were never properly set up before Endgame or before the end of Endgame that would have let us in, from a marketing perspective especially, to sell these new characters into Phase 4. I think it's always a mistake to where if you're going to end one segment that you don't at least give the audience, in this case, a segue into the next segment, and none of these characters were set up. So when we got announcements for things like Shang-Chi and the Eternals, everybody was like, huh? What? Who? Hey, who? You don't want that to happen. You want people to already know going in, oh yeah, I really want to go see these guys. I really want to see these characters. And the marketing that we did get this year as they were introduced was obviously all something other than what you would normally think a movie marketing would be. Telling you why the story is so important, telling you how good the story is, telling you how fun it is, that you're really going to enjoy it. But no, with the Eternals in particular, Kevin Feige's first big foray out into the public venues to talk about the Eternals at big marketing events that they did some months ago and things like this was how diverse and how representative the cast was, and how this was going to be the first this person and that person, and the first cast with this type of person or that type of person. And it's like, okay, that's great. That's fine. Great. Love it. What about the movie? I mean, do I want to see this movie? I mean, most people out there don't think, oh, wow, this cast has all these different checkboxes, ethnicities, sexual orientations, and things like this. That's not a reason to go see a movie. If you check boxes based on the people you cast, people want to go see a movie because they're interested in the story, or the trailers and the press releases have given people some type of hook to bring them in and say, wow, this looks like a great movie, I want to go see it. It doesn't matter who's cast in it. I don't care what the skin colors and the sexual orientations are. That's all fine and dandy. I just want a good movie. We have not really had that marketing from Marvel on this movie. We didn't get that kind of marketing on Shang-Chi, really in some respects even on Black Widow. And it's frustrating because it doesn't necessarily mean that a movie is bad or good because of that type of marketing, but the marketing is unfortunately wrong thinking. I mean, if they want to get people in the theaters, that's probably not the best thing to lead with. And then by extension, the only thing that you've talked about with a movie like this for the last several months. I still talk to people, they have no idea what the Eternals is, no idea where this fits in the timeline, not terribly excited about seeing it. And I think some of these reviews are starting to bear this out. I want to talk about some of these because I find them pretty interesting, to be honest with you. If we go in here to the professional critic reviews that we have to this point, and there are still some embargoes in place from my understanding, some of the bigger publications, certain publications are still embargoed for another day or two. So I think we'll see more reviews pile in, and I'm kind of thinking that these late reviews coming in from some of these larger publications, some of these major newspapers, I have a feeling that they're going to be more positive. Let's put it that way, and it's going to push this movie back into fresh territory. But I want to look at, looking at some of these things, you look at the Splatty Tomatoes, like here from Exclaim, it's way too much character development for one movie. Just imagine if we had met the Avengers at the same time. Excellent point. This movie is introducing 10 plus brand new characters. The movie is 2 hours and 37 minutes long. It's longer than Dune, for God's sake. And that is a lot of major characters in terms of an ensemble team like Guardians of the Galaxy or the Avengers. And I think this comment from Alex Hudson at Exclaim is probably going to be spot on. Some rough edges, but we should cherish a glossy blockbuster that has something to say. Again, this is not a very glowing review, but look, it's got a freshy tomato right next to it. In the end, Eternals is a fine movie, and sometimes significantly more than that it is too mired in exposition and predictable franchised-informed plotting. Well, yeah, and it got a splatty for that. Eternals is going to be a bit of a weird one. It's different, yes, but it's not bad on its own. That got a fresh. This does not sound like a ringing endorsement to me. And then Kyle Smith from National Review. Zal has graduated from a delicate artisanal industry. I can't talk tonight. To overprocessed, soul-challenged assembly line Hollywood junk in record time. Ouch. That's a bad one. Now look, this is one of the ones that really stuck out at me. It has a fresh tomato rating from VitalThrills.com, Mr. Alan Cerny. Eternals is not a bad movie. It is ambitious and tries hard to be different from the rest. However, it is ultimately unsatisfying, and that most of the film is full of promises for other stories to come. Let's hope they're not empty ones. Again, not a terribly good ringing endorsement. I wouldn't call that an endorsement at all, yet it is rated fresh. From the Arizona Republic, Eternals isn't a bad movie. It's just not a particularly satisfying one. Its scale is proving untamable even for Chloe Zhao. Again, and it gets a fresh rating from this guy. And this kind of thing goes on and on and on. So some of these things you really have to scratch your head. Why, if this is going to be your headline from your critique that's going on Rotten Tomatoes, how then do you present it with a fresh rating? So some head scratching going on there, and why this is. I think some people probably can understand that a lot of these critics, well, they might want to try to be honest in their reviews. As far as Rotten Tomatoes scores go, they're going to give it as far as the scores go, they want to give it a fresh rating to make the folks at Disney who give them some really nice goodie bags when they do these things happy and keep inviting them back, I suppose. But this is very curious. So one of the things I mentioned in the intro was a story that popped up earlier today on Deadline, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. But I want to talk about a few things first, because this is important to kind of set the stage for this. So here we are, The Eternals. This is from The Numbers, one of my favorite sites out there as far as looking at box office metrics. They track really well. They provide a swath of information on these releases, really good data points that you can go by and kind of look to see how things are. So we see right here, of course, there's no data yet as it has not been released, but I want everybody to see production budget $200 million. This is pretty much on par with what we have come to expect, especially in the last few years, with the exception of things like Infinity War and Endgame, whose budgets were substantially higher than $200 million. But this is the kind of thing we have come to expect from Marvel character movies. Okay, the production budget for Black Widow was in the $200 million range. Hell, it was said that $200 million was spent making Cruella, which I still can't understand. So this has kind of become a thing nowadays, especially for Disney, I guess across the board. Although I can't for the life of me understand where budgets that big are going to in some of these movies I'm seeing. So $200 million. Now we can again assume easily, because again, this is an MCU film, large global release. It's going to have another $100 million bare minimum in there for P&A, for marketing. Okay, this is a theatrical exclusive, albeit a 45-day limited window, but a theatrical exclusive 45-day window. If it follows suit with Shang-Chi, which is going to land for free on Disney Plus, I think next week, this will land for free on Disney Plus probably sometime in early to mid-January, about 60 days after its theatrical run. Now, what does that tell us? That tells us that this movie would need somewhere in the range of $550 to $600 million globally to reach a break-even point. So if you figure box office receipts on average, international, domestic, not talking about China, because once again, just like Shang-Chi, this movie will not be in China. We'll never see the light of day in China at this point. Nothing to suggest it ever will. Shang-Chi never will. China has made that clear. People still thinking that it's going to happen at some point. It ain't. It's not. It's not going to happen. Done. So, that being said, an average of around 50% of the global box office, give or take a few percent, we need to see $550 to $600 million to reach a break-even point on this kind of film, which is that's a tall ladder. That's a tall ladder to climb. I mean, before when I talked about Shang-Chi being in the $450 to $500 million range, yeah, that still holds. Sorry, folks. Because again, that was a $150 million net production budget that was said to be $200 million as well, was brought down to $150 million, reportedly due to an Australian film tax credit. Again, you still have an $80 to $100 million marketing budget on a movie like that. I think they probably spent more on Eternals than they did Shang-Chi. A little bit more, but maybe not much. Maybe not at all. Maybe they were both around $100 million. But that's why I said with Shang-Chi, where my numbers came in that $450 to $500 range. And that's just how it works these days with movie budgets like this. I mean, if they had spent $100 million on a movie like Venom and another $80 million or so on marketing, then yeah, I mean, right now Venom is pretty much right at that point where it should be starting to make some profits in the box office as it approaches $400 million. Shang-Chi had a much bigger budget than Venom did. Same thing here with the Eternals. So let's go over here. Eternals, first day advanced ticket sales. This is from a few weeks ago. I kind of want to walk through this process because this is where things are getting a little dicey. Because right now we've got some projection numbers we're going to talk about because these things have been moving targets. Then we're going to talk about going to touch on it because I'm probably going to have to do this in another video to get more in depth on what this is. This is seeing first-day advanced ticket sales beating Shang-Chi, beating Black Widow. AMC is seeing the biggest one-day pre-sale of the year, and this was for Eternals. So let's go down and take this again from Deadline, obviously. Exhibition need not worry. After October's vibrant box office, more blockbusters are on the way. The Gower Report, the analytical firm that we talked about in a previous video, talking about box office metrics, how the box office works. Go back and watch part 1 and 2 of that if you like. We talked about some of those Gower Street reports. They have updated a little bit. They think that the back half of this year that we're in now is going to be even better than they anticipated a few months ago, which is great news for the theaters. Insiders say advanced sales for the movie from Oscar-winning filmmaker Miss Chloe Zhao is estimated to have racked up 2.6 million in sales in its first 24 hours. That's 86% ahead of Shang-Chi and at 1.4 million and 30% ahead of Black Widow, which was $2 million over the same period of time. Number one exhibitor, AMC Theaters. Eternals reps their largest one-day sales so far this year. So, that's a big number. That's great. That's amazing. Doesn't really make any sense because the Eternals had, at that point, especially a few weeks ago, nobody was really talking about this. There wasn't that much interest in this movie. You could see from the Google search trends, you could see from Twitter trends, there really wasn't a whole lot of buzz going around to warrant to where, wow, it was even bigger than Shang-Chi, it was bigger than Black Widow, biggest thing so far this year. I mean, ostensibly bigger than Venom, Dune, everybody else. Wow, okay, the Eternals, like, everybody's like, what is this? People still don't understand what this movie is, and yet it's breaking these sales records. And you kind of have to wonder where this is coming from. So let's go over here to Box Office Pro. Okay, Box Office Pro. Now, I want to be clear. Just want to scroll back to the top for a second. This is October 15th. This is 2 days after the Deadline story broke with the best record first-day sales, pre-sales of tickets in the pandemic era at 2.6 million for the Eternals. And we had long-range box office forecasts for several movies, including the Eternals. So I want to come back down here now. And let's go back down here. So as of that date 2 weeks ago, a little over 2 weeks ago, October 15th, we have right here. Oops, that's a mess. The Eternals, okay, $82 to $102 million. This was, as of 2 weeks ago, the predictions for the opening box office a weekend. $82 to $102 million. That would put it north of Black Widow and Shang-Chi, not including the 4th Labor Day thing. I'm not doing that. This is a 3-day weekend. We're going to go tit for tat with a total domestic cum of 210 right here to $280 million. So that is a hell of a haul. But something's happened since then. Something's happened. And that has changed. As of 10/29, as of just a couple of days ago, on Friday last week, the Eternals 3-day opening weekend has plummeted down to 67 to 92, with a domestic total low high of 165 to 215. It's now putting it in the target range of Shang-Chi, of Black Widow, of Venom right now, for that matter. That has dropped down. Estimated location count, that's the number of screens they expect the Eternals to open on, at about 4,000, which is, again, on par with Shang-Chi. 1,000 more screens than Black Widow had at her open, but it's on par with Shang-Chi. So the numbers are coming down. This is due to some of the critic reviews now coming in that we see on Rotten Tomatoes. Now, I can tell this video is already running a little long, so I'm going to kind of cut it right here. I'm going to go into the topic I talked about at the beginning of this video in a subsequent video. And then I'm going to have a discussion with Cameron. Because there's an organization out there that basically packs the theaters. They buy tickets. And particularly when it comes to movies like The Eternals, like Shang-Chi, like some others I'll discuss. Discovered it this afternoon, did a little bit of digging into this. And yeah. So basically what they do is they are dedicated to making certain films have very good opening weekends, or as much as possible, by buying out theaters, by buying out empty seats. and the Eternals is the next one on their target list. And we're going to talk about that one in the next video. Stay tuned. I'm going to break this up. Should be releasing both of these on the same day. Take care. Until next time, please leave a comment below. Love to hear your thoughts on this. What do you think Eternals is going to do? Are you going to go see it? Are you interested in seeing it? Are you going to wait for it to hit Disney Plus in a couple of months? I'm really curious because, some of these openings have made me scratch my head. Really have. So we'll talk about that one on the next video. We'll do part 2 on this one coming up pretty soon, so stay tuned. Good to see everybody, and until next time, take care.